They say you should never be the smartest person. That you should constantly be surrounding yourself by those who know more than you, so that you're always learning. Thankfully, I get spent every day working with some very clever ladies. We don't speak the same language, but I still learn a lot from us. I spend every day working with microbes. Specifically, I study malaria, which is called one of the parasites that travel from host to host through mosquitoes. Malaria is a very old disease that's common to many parts of the world, namely most of the African continent and many parts of Southeast Asia and South America. Approximately half the world's population is at risk for getting malaria. Now, most people think malaria as a disease of the world, which is true, but not all times. While being alive, the parasites make themselves sticky, like burrs that you find on your clothes while eating. And the parasites use this to attach themselves to the outsides of your organs, like your lungs and your brain. Now, they don't directly invade these tissues, but that doesn't mean it's completely safe, because while the immune system is very good at identifying and fighting foreign microbes, sometimes it can get a little overzealous in its places. Think of it like a medical battlefield. Your organs are the castle, which immune cell soldiers surrounding the perimeter are supposed to protect. When the parasitic invaders come in and begin climbing the castle walls, your immune cells fight back in full force. They are boulders or catapults, but because they're aiming at an enemy that's already right next to the castle, some of those boulders break right through the walls. Some of the invaders may also pinch some of the soldiers, but trick goes inside of the castle and to let it out of the knowledge. As a result, the castle's defenses will weaker and weaker. It is this type of immune response that actually causes a large proportion of the severe complications you see in malaria patients. When your organs get swallowed by parasites, sometimes they get caught in the crossfire, and the results can be debilitating or fatal. In 2020, over 600,000 people died of malaria. And while that number may seem overwhelming, it's actually a major improvement compared to decades prior. There has been a relative push over the last century towards eliminating malaria, and while it still persists in 91 countries, we're not completely hopeless against this disease. There are a number of anti-malaria drugs available, and just last year, the World Health Organization gave its stamp of approval for the first time ever on an anti-malaria vaccine. This vaccine is specifically given to very young children who are the highest risk group in order to prevent them from developing severe malaria complications. These different measures have been amazing in terms of saving lives, but they are not enough. The malaria vaccine is still in its pilot phase, but the data already show us that while it's good at preventing severe malaria symptoms, it's not very good at preventing transmission. So a child who receives this vaccine might not die of malaria, but they can still catch it. Now, you may be thinking, is it not dying of malaria everything? And the answer is a resounding yes. But I believe it can do a lot better. Because as I said, microbes are very clever, which means they're excellent at seizing any and every opportunity that they can. In my research, I studied how microbes interact with our immune system and how they inadvertently function along the way. Many infectious disease research studies look at the microbes in a highly isolated setting, and they try to remove all outside influence. These studies are great in terms of understanding how these diseases work, but they don't represent a real world cartel. It's because people don't live in a bubble. We are coming into contact with millions of microbes every single day. Some of them live inside us, while others we come into contact with while navigating the world. In my work, I'm interested in what happens when two of these microbes happen to be in the same place in the body at the same time. We found that when you have both malaria and bacteria that causes throat, the disease becomes fatal much more quickly than it would if we just have malaria. We wondered if it was because the immune system was just getting overwhelmed by having to fight two infections at once. So malaria is allowed to progress a lot faster than it would normally. But when we looked at the symptoms and to the growth of the parasites, we see real differences. The bacteria, on the other hand, were growing wildly out of control. When bacteria are on their own in the body, they're easily controlled by the immune response. But when malaria is also involved, the bacteria are able to escape because the immune system is weakened. So the bacteria are able to establish themselves. Perhaps, strangely, this relationship reminds me a little bit of my childhood. I have a project named David, and when we were younger, we were getting into all sorts of trouble. David has some developmental disabilities, so I learned how to crawl, walk, and climb with all fast and active. But David was the one with the appetite. So, getting younger, our go-to was that I would climb onto the kitchen chair and get a cookie jar from the counter. And then I would pass the biscuits down to him so that he could enjoy them on the floor, one at each end. And in the lab, this is kind of like what I see my microbes doing, where the malaria gets to sneak in, and they get to set the stage. And then the bacteria get to sit back and control their own benefits. For this reason, even if you have an uncomplicated, non-fatal case of malaria, like the type of case that a vaccinated child might get, it may still leave you vulnerable enough for another opportunistic infection to take hold. You may be thinking, in a world of antibiotics, this isn't a problem. But with the rise of antimicrobial resistance and limited access to diagnostic resources for many malaria infections, it's not always possible to identify and to treat these other infections in time before the patient's comes. This tale of malaria bacteria that I teach in my research is just one example of why the microbial world is so complicated and why there's no singular, easy solution to eliminating infectious diseases. While studies that look at microbes on an individual basis are really important, we also need to consider the real-world interactions that are influenced with these diseases and factor that into our responses. By doing so, we can implement better disease surveillance and we can deploy the relevant treatments earlier. We have to take a multi-targeted approach if we want to remove all options from the microbes and end deaths caused by microbes such as the parasites and bacteria that DASL. When it comes to infectious diseases, just this once, let's be smart